what I want to argue and what I want to present is that we need to start thinking like content providers, okay? So I'm going to show you some examples of content providers and what they do, and this makes the case for what I think we need to be doing as businesses. So I started getting the idea of this a couple years ago, and I started to watch some companies like Entrepreneur. So here is something that was in my newsfeed a couple days ago. It's an article from Entrepreneur magazine, and if you follow Entrepreneur, you're probably getting a dozen to a dozen and a half notifications every day from them. But here's a really interesting article. Do you dream of starting your own craft brewery? Is craft beer as close to a sure thing as an entrepreneur can get? Now, this is kind of interesting from the standpoint of that, number one, it's very targeted. If I'm in this niche, or if I'm interested in this content, and by the way, I'm not, I don't do this, but I know this is a very rabid type of niche, they could have chosen to show this just to people who are interested in craft brewery or beer making. And this is the type of thing that we need to be thinking about in terms of our hidden autoresponder, the one that before they come to us. So this is a good type of example of putting out an article, a good content piece that somebody who is into craft brewery would like a lot. All right, so Entrepreneur is a good business to follow on Facebook because they kind of got this model down.
And I know them because I publish my books through them. And
yeah,
even though I'm one of their authors and I'm one of their favorite people and all of that, like, articles have to be really good or they don't accept them.
right.
And they live by the numbers, and like their social media people are always have a gun to their head like, we got to have so many likes, so many shares, blah, blah, blah. And they totally do that by the numbers. They're not dumb about it at all.
Well, and I believe their revenue model is based on impressions of people that get through to their site, right?
Yes, it is. Yes, that is absolutely correct.
So their whole goal for putting out content is to get people off of Facebook onto their website because they're driven by impressions. That's how they charge advertisers for their site. So TED is another one. TED has a really good, obviously TED Talks is something that's just kind of taken over. But what they do is they publish a lot of these, very similar to Entrepreneur. They're publishing multiple things a day. They've got so much content available to them. But they do a really good job of kind of teasing your interest, both in the body of the copy, with the creative, and with the headline. So, how to talk and listen to anyone, 10 ways to have a better conversation. It's interesting, all right? It's good content. And for those that might be having this as top of mind, it's going to draw your attention. It's going to drive me away from Facebook and get me to TED's page. Here's another one. I think you showed this in the first webinar, Perry. I already built this example. Humans of New York. This is just a really unique Facebook page, isn't it?
It is. And they do some very smart things. In fact, the first smart thing I'll point out that they do, so I always write in short little paragraphs.
Mm-hmm.
And they always do long paragraphs. And Bob, you and I haven't even talked about this, but I bet Bob probably can give you a pretty educated guess as to why.
Well, are you going to say it, or you want me to?
Well, I'm not trying to embarrass you, but take a crack at it if you think you know. I think I know why they do that.
Well, here's my take on this, all right? And I've used this strategy that Humans in New York do. It's like the first thing that I'm drawn to is the image. It's a different type of image that you would see from a lot of what you see on Facebook. And they tell a story, and it's a quote. So when I see this woman here, and I see a quote, I know it's her speaking. And what they do is, it's very similar to kind of a movie trailer. You start to read this story, okay? And it ends up like at a place where it's almost a cliffhanger, and you have to click to read more because it emotionally engages you. That's what I like about this and why I'm showing this.
Yes.
What do you see?
Well, I just wanted to comment that if they broke this up into little short two-sentence paragraphs like I do in emails, um, at some point you'd think you're at the end of this. You might possibly think you're at the end of the story, and you wouldn't click more. But because they bunch it all together, you always have that see more, and it's always interrupted, so you have to click to see more. And
Yep.
that's very clever.
Yeah, and this is the type of things when I tried to figure out like how do I make my business content more effective for the clients, I looked to the content providers because that's what I kept seeing in my newsfeed. Like why do I keep seeing content providers in my newsfeed? Well, because it's relevant content and people vote with their clicks and their engagement, and by doing so, Facebook rewards them and puts them in the newsfeed. A lot of this stuff that I'm seeing is not even paid. Now I do see some paid content from some of these people, but a lot of this is unpaid, and they just do a really good job of getting into my newsfeed. But for me, we're talking about this whole maze of emotionally connecting with somebody. To show a picture of somebody and start telling a story, like you're drawn in and you have to see more. You at least have to finish the story or find out what it's about. So this is one of the things that it really has drawn me, especially to this page, is that they know how to capture my attention and draw me away and draw me into their world, at least for a moment.
Hmm.
Now, this is an Instagram post from Humans of New York, and I just want you to note that they're taking the same approach here. Now, I said this morning on our preview webinar that Instagram is a very visual medium. Well, take a look here. Here's Humans in New York showing a visual, but they use the same um, they use the same tactic strategically, right, to tell the story and draw you in. Now, this one tells the whole story here, right? We don't get just to see more. But the same thing is happening here is that as I interact with Humans in New York, I'm going to see more Humans in New York in my newsfeed, on and on and on. Okay, so that's the strategy to use there. What I began observing is that the stuff that was most prominent in my newsfeed that was getting the attention was content that was engaging, content that's relevant, content that's interesting, it's inviting, it's emotional, it's useful, and it's really targeted. What I want you to start thinking about is not having one intro for your business and relying on one thing to draw people in. What we need to be thinking about in this new world is how many different ways can I introduce myself to my potential prospects? You know, every business, just like every person, has lots of facets to it, and there's a lot of interesting things about your business. There's a lot of facets to your business that you want to show. Part of what you need to be thinking about is how many different ways can I introduce people and pull people in? And I'm not just talking about offers, Perry. What I'm talking about is stories, angles, different content to drive people in that's of interest to them without them having to make a commitment to some offer or anything like that. But having the ability to say, hi, my name is Bob. Hi, my name is Perry. Here's something you might be interested in without requiring them to do anything other than engage with your content. Is that kind of goes against what we are about in the direct marketing world, isn't it, Perry?
Yeah, I think a lot of direct marketers are stuck in the 2000s or the 1990s, and we're just not there anymore. So I couldn't agree more. And yeah, like there's lots of entryways, and those. So you said, there's not just one story. There's lots of stories. So on
Mm-hmm.
that spiral thing, all right, the center of the spiral is like what you sell. But what's at the edges? It's all those little stories.
Yep.
Like you could have a customer, you could have a picture of your customer and telling a story just like the lady who moved here from Russia 8 years ago. And you have lots of customers with interesting stories. It's not like there's any lack of them.
And I think if people have been on your list long enough, they understand that you're already doing this in email. I mean, look, we've heard the Dilbert Cube story, we've heard the Amway stories, but even though we've heard the same stories, you tend to give us different angles of that story.
Hmm.
and you roll in news stories. So we want to be modeling that type of behavior where we are creating, we're constantly creating new content that we can roll into our machine that fits these criteria that I have here that can draw people in. Uh, I would argue our first job as marketers is not to get them to commit to be on our list to hear our offer. Our first job is to connect with them and let them know that we've got something of interest to them, that we're interesting enough for them to stick around and hear more about what we have to say. I think in this world, all we need to do is make some sort of a very, very surface level connection that we can start to wind them through that spiral deeper and deeper in through the maze. So we need to be better storytellers. We need to be more creative with creating things that fit some of these aspects that I have here on this list. Um, and in regards to doing this, is that you know as we're creating this in an automated fashion, and some of us have smaller universes to advertise to. So let's say the entire universe of people we have to advertise to on Facebook is around 10,000. Well, it's pretty easy to kind of saturate that list of 10,000 people really quickly, especially if you have the budget to do so. Let's say you have 10,000 people that you're targeted, and you can spend up to $100 a day. You're probably going to reach about half of that audience, and then probably reach them 1 to 2 times in that day with that same piece of content. So understand that you can't be pushing the same thing out at them over and over, that you're going to have to probably rotate in new content on a daily basis. If you got a list, let's say a targeted list of about 100,000 that you're going after, you can have stuff on a weekly basis. And if you're somewhere in that $1 million range where you're out prospecting to a larger pool, you might be able to run the same intro ad for about a month before it gets stale. These obviously change depending on your budget and so forth, but that's kind of a guideline in terms of like how fast do things go stale on Facebook before I have to start rotating in new stuff. I want to encourage you to make sure that as you rotate in new things that you don't use the same hook or angle in successive ads. Try to have something different in each of those ads to draw people in from a different angle instead of using the same one all the time. Make sure that you use different creative, different imagery so that you connect with them visually in a different way. You get really blind to advertisers that use the same image over and over. In fact, like if I start to see an image 3, 4, 5 times like within a week, I'll actually take the time to tell Facebook, like, stop showing me this. Like, I just keep seeing it. I don't need to see this ad 5, 7 times, and it's not relevant to me. So we need to, like, let's rotate in new stuff and keep things fresh. And then obviously what you want to do is you want to measure. As you put up new creative, you want to measure how much did it cost to reach people with this? What was the engagement rate? All those things. Keep track of your stats. Find out what works best.